Alright, back again with another gaming video, this time sharing my thoughts on some of the games that I've played recently. Um, Last time I was supposed to end with God of War Ragnarok, but I just ran out of time because I kept talking way too long about just trash like Call of Juarez, the cartel. So I didn't have the time to finish with Ragnarok. So I'll start with that one this time. So I have here a couple of PS5 games and then some PS3 games. I'll start with the PS5. So God of War Ragnarok. I finally got around to playing this. This is a Nordic copy of the game. And well, the original God of War reboot game, so God of War 2018, was easily one of my favorite games of that whole generation, the PS4 generation. So I bought this a couple of years ago at this point, and I just didn't have the time to play it. So I'm glad that I finally got the time to play it. It's a big one. It's over 60 hours if you want to do everything. It took me around 60 to 70 hours going for the platinum, doing all of the side stuff and the optional bosses and everything. So it is a big one. I would say that it's maybe a bit too big for its own good. So as far as I know, the studio, Santa Monica, they didn't want to make this into a trilogy because they wanted to move on to new things. So they just crammed everything they had left into this game, so that it's not a trilogy, but just a two-parter, God of War 2018, and then this one. And you can definitely tell that they had a lot of material and they just crammed it all in there. It took me a really long time to get into this game. Maybe at around 20 hours played, I really started to get into it and wanted to get going with the story and see where it goes. I think the early parts of Ragnarok are quite slow, and there's a lot of character building. If you don't want to get spoiled about Ragnarok, I will now say a couple of things about the story. So if you don't want to get spoiled, I'll show a thumb on my on the screen when you can turn the volume back up. But one of the things that I really didn't like about the early parts of the game is how much of an emphasis there is on the other characters, other than Kratos. So you have these gameplay sections, really long gameplay sections, where you are playing as Atreus, the little kid. You also have gameplay sections where you are controlling Freya, and there is so much emphasis on other characters that it was quite jarring and strange. And it is probably a conscious decision on the studio's part to focus more on the other characters. Aside from Kratos, Kratos is like the DLC, which is the Hades ripoff game mode, that focuses a lot on Kratos. But in the main storyline, Kratos is always there in the background. Even when you're controlling him, he's just there in the background, following other characters' storylines and helping them, which is strange for a God of War game. Like that's not really what I'm here for when I'm playing God of War. And especially the early sections where you are controlling Atreus, I thought that they were way too long. The part where you are in like the jungle area with the girl whose name I can't remember, the one who paints all the paintings. It just went on and on and on, and I was starting to get a bit worried about the game. Like, is this even going to be something that I enjoy? But then after around 20 hours or so, I really got into the game when the storyline started to move forward at a more rapid pace, and You got access to all of the big new areas that you, some of them are returned, like you return to them from the original game. You go back to the lake area that's completely different now because of all the ice and frost. And you could get to the crater. The crater is just a fantastic area. It's a completely optional side area. It took me around 10 hours to do everything there. So it's the size of what many other developers would consider like an entire game map. Is just there as an optional area. That's fantastic. I really started to get into the game and so on. But then at the end, it was a bit of a letdown. I'm sad to say it was a bit of a letdown. I think in terms of the storyline, the ending, the actual Ragnarok that happens, it wasn't nearly as impressive as I was hoping for. It was really a major cop-out from the developers also, because Ragnarok is supposed to be this apocalyptic event where basically everyone pretty much dies in horrific ways, and it's just complete mayhem and destruction. And we don't really get that here in this game. Almost everyone survives the Ragnarok. Like, what is the point of a Ragnarok? So like this end, like the world is ending basically. What is the point of it if the world doesn't end and pretty much everyone is just fine? It's weird. The boss fights were fantastic here near the end. Like the final boss fight, I thought was really fun, and just in general, the gameplay itself is fine. But I was really let down by the story and the pacing of the story. Just this constant changing between characters and this really slow build up to something that just isn't satisfying in the end. It was a big letdown. The DLC I enjoyed a lot. The story parts of the DLC I did enjoy a lot, where you kind of return to the roots of Kratos with these sort of flashes from the past, from the Greek days, and how those build on the character of the modern Kratos, who is just completely different from the original games. That was really interesting. I enjoyed that one a lot, but the main game was a bit of a letdown. Now, in terms of the actual gameplay itself, as I said, I did enjoy it. However, I feel like they went a bit overboard with many of the skills and just the upgrade trees and everything. There's so much to this, so many button prompts. And one of the problems that I had with the game, which is not necessarily the game's problem, but my own problem, is that I did have like weeks, sometimes 2 or 3 weeks in between of me being able to play the game. So when I got back to it, of course, I don't want to start from the beginning, because that would be just insane, always starting from the beginning if you have like a week or 2 weeks off. So I came back to the game, and I just didn't remember any of the button combinations. There are so many buttons that you have to press. You have the light attacks, you have the strong attacks, you have the runic attacks, you have all kinds of special attacks with L1 plus a button and R2 plus a button, and different combos and different skills. And if you use one skill and then like use another skill after that, there's some sort of a special like synergy between the attacks, and I just couldn't give a shit about that in the long run. I just used some of the attacks that I knew and some of the special attacks, the runic attacks that I knew, and got used to, and just used those over and over and over again. There were like dozens of attacks that I barely even used in the game. So if you're into deep combat systems, you can find a lot of customization here, a lot of different options. Some of the things that I enjoyed the most about the game, of course, the music. Again, same composer as with the original game, Bear McCreary, or whatever his name is. It's fantastic orchestral music, just really really bombastic and epic music. Enjoyed that a lot. The graphics are fantastic. The visuals, just every area that there is great. I also really enjoyed going back to multiple locations from the original 2018 game. Not just the lake, but also the area with the elves. I can't remember is it like elf? I can't remember the names of the areas, but yeah, you go back there and just multiple different areas, and they look fantastic. They look great, and the changes to the areas are really interesting as well. In terms of the amount of content, I almost thought that the side content was maybe even something that I enjoyed a bit more at times than the main storyline. So you have these huge side areas, not just the crater that I talked about earlier, but other areas where you can explore, and you can do quests that most games would have as parts of the main quests. So you in a desert, you do the stuff with the like the flying jellyfish creatures. All of that is not but not all of those areas are mandatory to go through, I don't think. And then you have the early lake area kind of a place where you get to like free the sea monster and everything. Like there's so many of these like epic moments that are almost like afterthoughts and not even a part of the main storyline. It's insane the amount of content there is here. In the original game, they had the ultra difficult Valkyrie boss fights. In here, they have these like Berserker Viking boss fights. Some of those were extremely tough to get through, but I thought they were quite nicely balanced and just enjoyable to go through. Some areas I found a bit too convoluted. So in terms of the level design, it is a step up from the original game in the sense that the areas are more varied and there's a lot to explore. But some of the areas were incredibly convoluted and difficult to navigate, especially when you returned to the mine area later on in a game. I missed a couple of collectibles there early on, and you also have to backtrack because you get new skills that allow you to enter areas you couldn't before. So you have to backtrack, and backtracking in a mine area was just a complete nightmare. In terms of the overall package here, I think it's really strong. I did enjoy it as a whole. Just there were maybe a bit a couple of negatives that I was hoping there wouldn't be. Some parts of the game that I wished were more concise and more like not as overblown. So yeah, I do prefer the 2018 game over this, unfortunately. But it's still a really, really strong game. I can see why a lot of people love Ragnarök, but I can also see why it is a bit more controversial than the original. I've started to see more and more people kind of criticize the game. You didn't really see that when the game was launched, but after people had spent months and months with it and put just a ton of hours into it, more and more people started kind of questioning if this is as good as the 2018 game, and I don't think it is. I did enjoy also one thing. I'll add before I move on to another game. I did enjoy a lot the third weapon they added, the spear with all of the wind attacks that can push enemies back and so on. I did enjoy that weapon a lot. So I think the combat systems are incredibly polished and varied. Great level design for the most part. Great music. The story could be better. The writing could be better, especially near the end. But I'm looking forward to where they go from here. There has been rumors that they would return to Greek. I have no idea why they would do that. I don't think there's any reason for them to return to Greece, not Greek. Greek is the language. Greece is the country. I don't think there's any reason for them to return to Greece at this point. So I'm hoping they will go to some new place. But yeah, God of War Ragnarok. It's a good game, not as strong as I was hoping for. So I guess I'll give it a low 9 out of 10. I think that's fair for God of War Ragnarok. Next up, a game that is awful, and I would suggest not playing it necessarily. This is a Dreadout 2, and this physical is an Asian copy of the game. The game itself is completely in English, but just the physical is an Asian release. Dreadout 2 is a horror game. It's kind of a small budget indie horror game. I think there are, this is Dreadout 2. I think there are 2 games in a series before this. So this is the 3rd game in a series. I haven't played the originals. I just wanted to check this one out. There is also a physical that has the other games, which I don't own yet. I'll get it at some point. Even though I think that this game is just garbage, I still want to check out the early games as well. The main problem with Dreadout 2 is that the PS5 version is completely broken. Like that's the main problem. It has some interesting ideas and I do enjoy parts of it, but the main combat, this game plays a lot like Fatal Frame. So you have a camera and you take pictures of ghosts and you fight the enemies that way. The main combat system is broken in this PS5 version. I've read online that the other versions of the game, so the PC version, for example, work better. It's still not perfect, but in the PS5 version, it's like a 50-50 chance if you hit an enemy or don't. And it doesn't make any sense. Like the system is completely broken. It doesn't make sense. You take photos of the enemies and sometimes it just doesn't register at all, which makes many of the boss fights really frustrating, borderline unplayable. And that's a bit of a problem. There are other aspects to the game that I do enjoy a lot. I really like the strange atmosphere in the game. It is in between missions. It is kind of not an open world game, but you get to explore the city. It's set in this. I think it's set in Indonesia. That's where the developers of the game come from. So you get to explore this, like, for me, exotic city and just meet all these weird side characters. Street sweeper lady, all these weird side characters. Some of them have quests related to them, and there's this offbeat humor to the game that I found very compelling. It is almost like a throwback to the PS3 era. It feels like a PS3 game in many ways. It's very limited in terms of scope and the gameplay systems and everything, but it has this strange charm to it and this humor to it that I do vibe with a lot. I think it's really fun. There's lots of cats all around the city, and they have these weird, unique animations to them that the developers clearly spent a lot of time on. I don't know why they would do that when the game is almost broken, but if you like cats, there's lots of cats to see and they do weird stuff in the game. It's kind of funny. The horror elements, I think, are quite well implemented. There is this change between a regular world and a nightmare world, like you often see in horror games, and the visuals are pretty nice. The ghosts are kind of spooky. The designs of the ghosts are nice. Or some of them are pretty funny as well. You have the ghost who drives around on a scooter. That's kind of hilarious. And it's based on local actual like folklore and these sort of ghosts and like supernatural folk stories from the region. So it's kind of interesting, and there's lots of writing also in the game that explains what the ghosts are and where the stories come from, and so it was quite nice. If the game wasn't broken, I could see myself giving it a maybe 5 out of 10, maybe even a 6 out of 10 on a good day. But because it's broken, I have to like drop it down to a 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10 range. It just doesn't work, which is unfortunate. So that's Dreadout 2. Moving on to PS3 games, I have here Killzone 1, 2, and 3. So let's go through the Killzone games. Starting off with the original, this is the Classics HD Physical, which is a European release. Does have a manual and everything. So the original Killzone, I did play this at a friend's place when I was younger. And I specifically remember that I played the jungle levels. And when I went back to the game and I played it from start to finish, I knew exactly which of the levels I had played, and those were the jungle levels where you are in this. It's kind of like Vietnam, basically, but on a strange planet. So you are in this swamp area in the jungle, and you walk around in this knee-high or waist-high water, and it's sort of a stealth section at times. I have played that one a couple of times in the past. So the other parts I hadn't played before, I don't think. So the original Killzone, this is a game from 2004, originally on the PS2, and you can see that quite clearly. The frame rate and the actual gameplay in this PS3 version, I think, is much better than on the PS2 version. From what I can remember, it plays quite smoothly, or not. The frame rate isn't perfect, but it is smooth enough that I didn't have any problems with it. Otherwise, I think the game is extremely dated and hasn't aged particularly well in many parts. It is clearly a PS2 era console exclusive, right? If you think about 2004, that's the same year that Half-Life 2 was released on a PC. And this game is nowhere near Half-Life 2. If you think of the revolutionary physics in Half-Life 2, all of this, like the great iconic characters and the storyline, this really impressive and surprising storyline that is built into the Half-Life universe, and the borderline open world exploration aspects of it, none of that is here. None of it is here. The game looks pretty bad. It plays like a console shooter from the PS2 era. It's not particularly fluid in terms of the controls. Some of that is on purpose, because Killzone has surprisingly hard shooting mechanics for a console game. And that also applies to Killzone 2, which I think is even more hardcore. They made it a lot easier in Killzone 3, but there's like first bullet accuracy in Killzone is quite bad, so you have to be still. You have to crouch down if you want to hit enemies properly. You have to aim properly, and you cannot just hold down the trigger. You have to shoot like short bursts and single bullet fire and everything. So it is surprisingly hard in that regard. But it just doesn't feel that good. The levels are chopped up into these short sections in the original Killzone. They take around 10 to 15 minutes for the most part to play, and then there's a loading screen, and then you play the next part. So the game is split up into these small sections. That's usually just, ground forces, you controlling different ground forces characters and just shooting Hellghast. There is some variety to the game. There are 4 different playable characters. They have their own different, unique spin on them. One of them is more of a stealth character. One of them is just your typical army soldier guy, Marine. He's also in the second game. Then you have the heavy the heavy machine gunner Rico, and then you have a fourth character who is a Hellgast who has defected or something like that. They have a little bit of variety. Some of the characters take different routes during the mission, so you see different parts of the map depending on who you choose, but there isn't really that much replay value here. And it's annoying that the trophy list has also been restricted in the sense that you have to play through the game with all of the characters, and I just didn't do that. So I didn't go for the platinum here at all because of that. The game itself is just fine. I think it's good. The Hellgast as an enemy, it's an iconic design, as you can see on the cover. It's a really strong visual with the red eyes. I like that a lot, and it's a solid console FPS. I don't think it's anything special. I don't think it's some legendary game. Maybe it was for the PS2, but I don't know. I don't think time has been really that gracious with the series overall. More about that next when I talk about Killzone 2. So I would give the first game in the series a 7 out of 10. It's all right. It's pretty good. Now, Killzone 2, I have the steelbook here. Killzone 2 is the first proper PS3 Killzone game, and it's better than the original in every conceivable way. It looks better, it sounds better, it plays better, it has more variety in the level design. The storyline is quite interesting. So in the first game, you are defending against a Hellgast invasion. In the second game, it's flipped around. You are now attacking the Hellgast home planet. So in this war against Hellgast, like Earth and the human alliance against Hellgast from like whatever planet Helgan or wherever they're from, you are now attacking. So there is this kind of a moral gray area in the game. In the original game, you are the defender, and in the second game, you are the attacker. So there's this different tone to the game. It's much darker than in the original game. There's just all kinds of shenanigans going on, just using basically like weapons of mass destruction and everything like that you didn't really see in the original game, at least to the extent and as you do in the second game. It's an interesting game for sure. The shooting mechanics, I'm not a huge fan of. A lot of people like Killzone 2, for example, in particular because of the shooting mechanics, which are difficult. It's not an easy shooter by any means. It is easier to miss your shots than hit them, let's just put it that way. And many of the weapons in the game aren't really that strong. It's funny that you are given... I think it was in this second one where you are given the arc lightning thrower weapon. You are only allowed to use that for one level. It's so annoying. It's the best weapon in a game. There are some good weapons. The sniper rifle is another one. I really like that a lot. But you aren't allowed to use them for the most part. Whenever you would like to. There's only a couple of sections where you get to use them. So just the basic assault rifles, I think they are just awful. Like it's really difficult to hit anything with them. And that's not just because I'm bad at the game. It's the first bullet accuracy, it's the recoil. It's the sensitivity settings also for moving the crosshair. I never could find a setting in a game that was good for me, that felt good for me to play. It was always either too slow or too fast, and it just doesn't feel accurate. Which is annoying because I think this is by far the strongest game in the series, and I would like to enjoy it more than I do. The levels are again split into these smaller sections. This time there aren't that many loading screens, which is great. And one game that I was reminded by a lot here, because the game is extremely fast-paced in terms of how the story progresses. The gameplay itself is kind of slow-paced, like you move around pretty slowly, and it's easier to just take cover and fire a couple of shots and take cover and that sort of thing. But the storyline itself is just constantly moving forward. You are an attacking force in a war. You are just you get to the beach. You shoot your way through the Helgas at the beach. You get into the town, and you just keep moving forward all the time, constantly. And it reminds me a lot of Vanquish, the PS3 game by Platinum, where you are also a part of this sort of an army moving forward at a rapid pace. It was quite interesting. I like the pacing a lot. I like the levels a lot. Except for the final level. The final level I'm not a huge fan of. It's basically just an arena shooter. You're in this one giant room and you have to survive waves and waves and waves of enemies before eventually doing the final boss fight. It just took so long to get through the final section. Yeah, I would give Killzone 2 a strong 8 out of 10. I can see if I played this during the PS3 era, I could see myself falling in love with the game. Also, the online functionality isn't there anymore. The online was something that a lot of people played back in the day. I heard many good things about it, but I never ended up playing it myself. So you cannot play that anymore, which is unfortunate. So had I played this in the PS3 era with the online and everything, I probably would like this game more. But yeah, it has definitely aged better than the original game, and it's still a really enjoyable and definitely worth playing. One of the better PS3 FPS games for sure. So that's Killzone 2. And then the third game, which is basically a direct continuation in terms of story from the second game. I'm not going to spoil the whole storyline, but you are again fighting against an enemy force. And it's a more casual experience. The gameplay is easier. I think this is the first time in a Killzone series where they nailed the feel of the crosshair movement. I wish Killzone 2 had this crosshair movement with the same level of difficulty with the recoil and everything. That would be fantastic. But there isn't. Killzone 3, I guess, is different from the first two, mainly in the sense that there is a insane amount of different gameplay sections. You control mechs, you control jetpacks, you fly around on jetpacks. There's a level with snowmobiles. You're going at a fast pace on a snowmobile. Lots of variety to it. I always prefer it when FPS games stick mainly to the actual gunplay. I'm not a huge fan of these mech sections and everything. They look impressive and they are quite fun at times, but there may be a bit too many of them here. The storyline, as I said, continues straight from the second game. They bring back some of the characters from the second game, but not all of them. It's the same thing with Killzone 2. It brought back some of the characters from the original game, but not all of them. Killzone 3, it's a more casual experience. It's more of the same with some new twists, new weapons. It has clearly taken a lot of cues from Call of Duty games. There are extensive stealth sections where you have to silently kill enemies, and if you fail, then it goes loud, much like in Call of Duty Modern Warfare. And also the snowmobile section is obviously inspired by Modern Warfare as well. I'm guessing, when did Modern Warfare 2 come out? This one is from 2011. I guess it's before that. So I could be wrong on that. Maybe, I don't know which game took inspiration from which, but I'm guessing this one took inspiration from Call of Duty and not the other way around. That's if my memory serves me correctly. It sometimes doesn't, but yeah. Anyway, Killzone 3, I think it's another, it's a solid 8 out of 10. It's not as good as the second game, I don't think, but it's fine. It's all right. The writing in the third game is a bit more cartoony and silly than in the second game, which is something that I don't particularly enjoy, because the game series so far in the first two games was quite serious and dark in tone. In Killzone 3, you have these antagonists who are very cartoony evil. That was strange. Yeah. So that's my thoughts on Killzone 1, 2, and 3. It's an alright series. I did enjoy going through all of the games here. Now, maybe I'll do Shadowfall at some point, the PS4 game, but it's not really a priority for me at the moment. Alright, a couple more PS3 games to finish off. I played, I don't know why, I just got the feeling that I want to play a Dynasty Warriors game, so I played through Dynasty Warriors Strike Force, which is originally a PSP game. It's a PSP online game, and they brought it over to the PS3. You can definitely tell that it's a PSP game originally. Many small levels, like you go from room to room in the levels. It's very different from typical Dynasty Warriors games where you have these big maps with all kinds of events happening around the map, and then you have to basically know where to be at the right time to do some boss fights and then have enough time to go to another section in the map. This is not like that. It's single rooms connected by, going through a door, basically. And some of the levels have dozens of these rooms connected to one another. Some of them only have one. So it is much more simple than the other Dynasty Warriors games in the series. It is a fun game. I enjoyed my time with this. I played it for over 60 hours. I didn't expect that to happen, but it did happen because there is a lot of content here. Much of the content is filler and is there just to occupy your time. So you have over 100 missions in the game, if I remember correctly. And you are collecting materials that you have to use to craft weapons and items and everything. And if you want to unlock everything, you're going to grind and grind and grind and grind again for countless of hours doing it. The storylines, you have your typical, it's the Romance of Three Kingdoms. You have Shu, Wu, and Wei, the factions, and they all have their different storylines and different battles that they engage in, and all kinds of backstabbing and intrigue going on between the factions and everything like that. You have all of the characters here that you would expect, the classic ones. You have Guan Yu and Xiao Yu and all the ones, Cao Cao, or Cao Cao as I like to call him, and Zhao Dun and Dian Wei and all the characters, everyone you would like to have, you have here. Lots of variety in that sense. In terms of gameplay, it has the same problem as many other Dynasty Warriors games, where you start off at level 1 and the game is so slow and boring. It is incredibly slow and boring. Your characters are slow, they attack slow, the attacks are weak, the defense is weak, and it is a slog at first, but then you level up your characters and it gets better and better and better and faster and more complex. And eventually you're just flying through the stages and wrecking all the enemies, and it gets actually fun. But I think it's always been a problem with Dynasty Warriors games, that they just start off way too slow and boring, and they only get better later on when you unlock stuff. And that's the case here as well. So if you like Dynasty Warriors games, or Dynasty Warriors games, however you want to pronounce it, I think this is an interesting curiosity. It is different. It is in many ways different from the mainline games. So this is built for a multiplayer game. This was an online multiplayer game. You have these 4 character like teams, and if you played online, you could have like multiple human players collaborating, right? But it works as a single player game as well, because the AI companions that you have, they are quite useful at times. Not always, but at times. Like, they do the job. You can finish all of the levels, even the hardest ones, with just the AI companions. The gameplay is much more arcade, even more arcadey than typical Dynasty Warriors games. Just all kinds of special attacks flying all over the place. And it is weird in a sense that there is a lot of emphasis on aerial combat here. So it plays like a Dragon Ball game almost, where you're flying through the air and floating there, fighting enemies in mid-air. It's weird. It's weird for a Dynasty Warriors game, but it works, and it's fun. And after you have upgraded your characters, it does get ridiculously fast, and just it's like this ADHD version of Dynasty Warriors. Feels like it's sped up. You're just zipping around the map, flying around, attacking all the enemies. The bosses there are these massive boss fights against these. There's a dragon. There's a massive tiger. These weird boss fights that you wouldn't expect in a regular Dynasty Warriors game. So I did enjoy my time with Strikeforce. It's just that there is so much grinding in it if you want to unlock everything, which I did. Like, after I'd used maybe 40 or 50 hours in a game, I was just missing a couple of items, and I spent the rest of the time grinding to get those items and unlocking everything. So I would give Dynasty Warriors Strikeforce maybe a 6 out of 10. It was an enjoyable 6 out of 10. The online is obviously dead now. I think it is still online, so the servers are online, but there obviously aren't people playing it anymore. So there's that. Right. And then lastly, to finish off this episode of Recent Gaming, I played through Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance for the first time. A game that I have owned for probably over 10 years at this point. When was this released? Like 2012, maybe? 2013. So I think I got this game in 2016 or 17. So not exactly 10 years, but pretty close. And, well, I like Metal Gear a lot, especially the first one and the third one. And I also like Platinum games, like Bayonetta. So that's an interesting combination for sure. And this is definitely a different style of game from what you would expect usually from Metal Gear. A sort of a hack and slash action game. Quite interesting. It works surprisingly well. I was really dreading playing this game because I was afraid that it wouldn't be as strong as, like, I've heard so much hype about this game for so many years that I was expecting a masterpiece that I would instantly fall in love with. So I was kind of afraid to go into it and be disappointed. But I don't think it disappointed me necessarily. There are aspects to the game that I didn't enjoy, and it's definitely not a style of gameplay that I'm very comfortable with, but I did enjoy my time with the game. So let's start off with some things that I didn't really enjoy about the game. Some of the controls in Revengeance are not really that accurate, and for a game that is built for ultra fast hack and slash combat, it it is disappointing when the controls are inaccurate. So for the most part, the game feels great. Running around, you have this ninja run where you hold down a button and you instantly jump over obstacles and run on walls and everything. It works really well. And just the combat in general, it is very heavy on parrying and knowing timings. So it does have a steep learning curve, but once you get into the system, it makes a lot of sense, and it works really well. The parry system in this game is some of the most enjoyable parrying I've done in games. And I say that as someone who usually dislikes parrying in games. I've never been good at parrying, and I've because of that always disliked games that are heavy on parrying. Sekiro is one of the exceptions to that as well, and this one is now another exception to that rule. But there are parts to the controls that I think are too inaccurate. So there is this slow motion mode where you have to slice in a specific direction, and the controls for controlling what angle you slice in, they are so finicky and strange. There are multiple different ways to how you can do that do that action in the game, and I just didn't really get into it at all. I always felt like I lined it up properly, and then I pressed attack, and it just for no reason, just slightly changed the angle. Maybe I hit the thumbstick in a wrong way or whatever, and it just sometimes ended up missing the attacks, and then you get wrecked by the boss fights and everything. So that's annoying. The controls are a bit annoying at times. Another thing that I didn't enjoy, which is maybe a bit controversial because this is one of the points about the game that people most like, and it's the music. I really dislike this sort of guitar rock, like mainstream guitar rock, that this many tracks in this game are. It's not everything. Some of the boss music I think is absolutely fantastic. Especially this, I think it's the second boss in the game. It's the woman with the octopus arms, like multiple armed woman. Whatever her name is, I can't remember the names of the characters anymore. The song that plays during that boss fight is fantastic, but usually the soundtrack is this. It is very Hideo Kojima. Like, he likes this type of music. He likes this type of radio guitar rock, this sort of hype up tempo guitar rock music, and I just think it's so cheesy. It's so cheesy, and it's just not something that I personally enjoy. But that's a me problem, and not necessarily a problem of the game. That I just don't like this type of music, and it is so prominent and so over the top all the time that it just took me out of the experience at times. Another thing I forgot to say about the controls: cutting off the arms of the enemies. So there are enemies that you have to collect arms from. Man, cutting those arms is such a chore. It is so annoying because you are constantly just missing the cuts. So that's another case where the controls are a bit wonky. Otherwise, I like the game a lot. I think the boss fights are fantastic. They are Kojima boss fights. Some of them were maybe a bit too long, like the boss fight. I guess it's the fourth one or the third one, the one with the guy who is like ultra fast and just dodges all of your attacks. I thought that boss fight was drawn out and really far too long. Also, the parrying gets a bit obnoxious in the final boss fight, where you have to do it. You have to know where every single timing to even get through the boss on the normal difficulty level. I only played the game on the normal difficulty level, and then I played through it again, collecting collectibles and stuff on the hard difficulty. I never did the hardest difficulty levels, but yeah. It's a fun game. It is a fun game. It's a short one. It's maybe 5 to 6 hours long. I think that's great. I think that is a great length for this style of game. And there's lots of replay value, lots of extra content to unlock. You have VR missions here. That's a throwback to Metal Gear. And lots of content, lots of unlockables, lots of customization, lots of different weapons to use, sub-weapons to use. There's surprisingly there's I wasn't expecting there to be this much to the game as there ended up being. So that's definitely a positive surprise for me. And I'm really glad that I wasn't disappointed by the game overall, because I think that game is just it's one of the better PS3 games I've played in recent memory. Definitely the best one out of all the ones in this video. So I would give Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance a strong 9 out of 10. A strong 9 out of 10. Really enjoyable PS3 title. Has aged magnificently well. Yeah. And the criticisms that I have for the game are quite minor, all things considered. So yeah, that's it for this time. That's 7 more games that I've played recently. I'll be back again next week for something else, something collecting related most likely. See ya.